Good evening, everyone. I'm Rick Walker with the SST Car Show. This is Sunday Night Live on SST, and tonight we're talking about auto industry recalls, the secrets of the industry, and we have an industry insider who is going to share his thoughts with us and some of his secrets. So stay with us because we have a great live stream for you tonight.
You're watching the Autos 360 Network.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Rick Walker, and this is SST Sunday Night Live. And tonight joining us is my good friend, Brenden Kennedy, who for a long time worked in a call center taking phone calls from consumers who had questions about automotive warranties and automotive recalls. And tonight, as an industry insider, he's going to share some of his insights and even some of his secrets. How are you tonight, Brenden? We have no audio, Brenden. No audio. Let's see if we can get Brendan's audio fixed. Crinkly nose, and there, I have some audio now. I can hear something. Just your camera. Fine. There we go.
Yeah, we're back.
He's live.
Hey, everybody. How are you?
Well, I'm okay. I hope everyone else out there in the land of the internet is okay too. And I appreciate you joining us tonight because everybody is impacted by this, because automotive recalls, warranty work, all of that stuff. If you own a car, whether you buy a new one or a used one, these issues affect just about everyone, because let's face it, every automotive company has some sort of recall history and will continue to have recalls into the future because it's an industry-wide issue, right?
Yes, and a lot of it is always going to be factored around three separate things, more or less. So number one being safety of the operation of your vehicle. So if we've all remember the Toyota gas pedal recall, where there was questions regarding gas pedals that would keep accelerating your vehicle regardless of whether or not the driver was putting their foot on it. More particularly with the Chrysler brands that I had, one of the more infamous safety recalls that had been implemented was on the early model Jeep years from the 90s, where the gas tank was designed at the back of the vehicle. So it made it susceptible during a rear impact collision. It could potentially cause your vehicle to explode. Oddly enough, they felt that resolving that safety issue was the way they would resolve it would be by putting a trailer hitch at the back of the car to take the impact away from the gas can. So that was one of the things that I had dealt with when I first started there. Another thing that they're looking at too on a continual basis, especially with newer model cars that you may buy, is customer satisfaction related things. So it could be something as simple as particular cars with you go to open the door and there goes the door handle with it. Quite unfortunate. But
so tell me this: after having worked there, how long did you do that job or work in that business?
I worked in that field for 7 years, and I did it in both the United States and Canadian markets.
So before we get into a lot of details on some of these particular recalls and warranties, Do the auto companies actually care about their consumers? Do you think? Or is it just a numbers thing for them? Or is it just a big heartless, faceless uh, corporation?
I
Or do
would
they
say
actually
that
care?
the individuals that take the calls absolutely do care. Maybe almost to a fault. The automotive industry does care because they want you to come back and they want you to buy cars. Number one, right? So
Right.
how much do they actually care is probably very little, but I mean, at the end of the day, they're Transport Canada and the NHTSA in the United States make sure that they do. At the end of the day, quite a few huge cash fines have been implemented by the NHTSA for some of these things. So one way or another, they're kind of meant to make the automakers care. Um,
So
and that
when you
they,
were working, so as you were going through this journey in your
yeah,
career, were there things that really made your eyes open up and your jaw drop? Any big surprises?
uh, big surprises would be how intricate electronics in the cars, for especially newer cars, a lot of them are not very good. A lot of, like, I did hear that there was things as little as like heated seats having a short, and then the heated seat caused the car to burn down. So I mean, I have heard of things like that, and that's quite heartbreaking. And I mean, if you have your car parked in your garage or something, and your car gulfs into flames, it has the capability of taking your house down with it. Um,
Mhm.
and the
And well, we've seen fires with Tesla models. Um,
Yes, that's
and
in the
so,
news right now.
yes.
Um, it's something that happens to like every car brand at the end of the day. But I'm really kind of shocked that uh, the intricate electronics that they're implementing in the cars is really kind of, it's not made for durability and long lasting. It seems to me that the parts that they use are just not up to standards for something that, if you want to, like, if you buy a car, right? There's two expensive things that you buy in your life, and that's your house and your car. You expect your
Mhm.
car to last 10 years brand new when you get it. You should expect it to do everything you need it to do for at least 10 years. But a lot of these electronics just don't hold the course of time. Um, I'm not going to go out and say that they're faulty, but I'm going to go out and say that I feel that they're cheap, and I feel that um, they don't have good durability.
And you're
I've seen,
basing that on what? The number of calls, complaints that you received as
yeah,
someone working in a call center?
yes,
It's
just
actually
like
speaking with consumers?
speaking with consumers, and as well as, um, all the documents that I have looked at in the past, and like how many cars have been impacted by certain things, and so on and so forth. Or
And why do you
so
think the electronics are the way they are? Is that because vehicles have become increasingly more digitized, more digital, more computerized?
it's the computerization aspect of it. So everybody loves those infotainment systems in their cars,
Mhm.
but they're not good for long lasting durability. I mean, I would wager to say most people's tablets don't last beyond 2 3 years. You're putting a tablet in a car, you're expecting that to last for 10 years? Like, come on, give me a break. Also, it's manufacturing price point, right? So the manufacturer is going to um, build for less and sell for more, almost always.
So is this a concern for you as we move more toward autonomous vehicles, cars and SUVs, minivans, buses,
It should
transport trucks that drive themselves or
it should
will?
concern everybody. It should concern everybody. We are, without a question of a doubt, um, going to be we're going to have autonomous vehicles, whether people like them or not. I think that probably 9 times out of 10 they'll be safer than people who actually drive. Um, and that the accidents that we had seen with some of the self-driving vehicles is things like somebody had got, like a pedestrian had stepped out onto the roadway when they shouldn't have. But I think one thing that the automotive companies should focus on is focus on durability of parts and making sure that their cars last a long time. But it's like everything else these days. Things are designed to be thrown out. They're not designed to be repaired and that sort of thing.
Right. And we've seen some big recalls over the years. I think one of the biggest, and I think it's still ongoing, is these Takata airbags.
Yes.
Like that's been a huge safety issue.
Now, I mean, I'm not sure how many of your viewers are located in Canada, but for the Takata Airbags issues, so that all has to do with the suppliers itself, which in Japan, where they make these airbags, that is all on them, and I don't think that in any type of testing scenario they would have detected that issue. So for those who don't know, the Takata airbag recalls, which has impacted the automotive industry in its entirety, has an issue where it basically turns your airbag into a shotgun shell. So during normal airbag deployment events, if these airbags are subjected to periods of long-lasting humidity, you can experience shrapnel fragments going to your face, which that's bad enough. You're in a car accident, and then your airbag kills you, right?
Right. And I think in the States, in the US, they've had, I think, a total of 27 people die as a result of that. And I think they've had around 400 serious injuries.
That's intense. And
Yeah.
it's important to know, though, like the key words that you're looking at in there are if your vehicle is subjected to long periods of intense humidity, then that's what is the root cause of the problem. So a lot of people who live in Canada or they live in the upper Midwest of the United States and stuff like that, it's not going to have as big of an impact on them. So I mean, I wouldn't worry about it. But I always tell everybody when you buy a car, and the automakers do make it really easy for you to check to see if your vehicle has a recall. Every one of them has on their website a place where you can plug in a VIN, and it'll tell you exactly what all the recalls on the car were and what they are, and how you can go about getting them completed. So it is something that is very easy to resolve.
And I know that in the United States, you can go to the NHTSA website, National Highway Transportation Safety Administration, and do the same thing. They have all the recall information right there. And in Ontario, Canada, you can go to the OMVIC site and get the same information. And I think every manufacturer also has their own section to get recall information, right?
Yeah, so you can go to, say you have a Jeep, you can go to jeep.ca. There's a section there for recalls. Plug in your VIN number, and it'll tell you everything that you need to know. And this is also important because it could potentially save you from paying for unnecessary repairs. I do know that some ignitions on like Dodge Journeys and stuff like that have a key fob issue, and that a lot of people ended up paying out of pocket for repairs for something that they could have just brought it to the dealership and then they would have fixed it free of charge, and then you wouldn't have had any type of headache at all. Other than
So a lot of these recalls are not just safety oriented; they could just be right. Yes.
Yeah.
So recalls are not necessarily a bad thing; they can be a good thing, right?
They can be a good thing, and it going back to your question a little bit there about do the auto companies care? Well, I mean, they certainly care enough to. I know that can't remember what brand of vehicle it was, but it had something to do with an appearance piece on the car where it was falling off the cars or something like that. and the auto manufacturer did a customer satisfaction recall on it, and that was to make sure that the part was going to be on the car itself and not blow off. So there is a degree of them wanting to satisfy customers in that regard for sure. Um, as far
Well, I
as
can relate to that because even just last fall, I was buying a Volkswagen Golf or Volkswagen GTI, and it was used, but I found out that there was some paint peeling down around the rocker panel on the passenger side. And I found out in the process of purchasing the vehicle that if you went to Volkswagen by a certain deadline, they would actually repaint that portion of the car that would be affected
Yeah,
at no charge. So these things can not only protect the consumer but improve customer satisfaction and preserve the value of your vehicle if you take advantage of these recalls and make sure that you're aware, right? So that's, in your estimation, a pretty important thing to make sure that you're aware of these
yeah.
recalls.
It should be the number one thing you look at when you buy a used car, and just getting the time to uh, get it done right away. And at no time would I suggest anybody panic, because that was the number one thing that I had seen a lot of the times, is that people would get these notices in the mail and they'd be like, "Oh my gosh, my car is unsafe to drive." And you have to kind of look at like the statistical anomaly of it. So it's like uh, 10,000 vehicles impacted. What are the chances of this particular item occurring to you? It's really not worth freaking out about. Um, and oftentimes it's just an inconvenience to take your vehicle to the dealership to
Right.
resolve something.
And you know, I'm old enough to remember one of the most famous recalls in history, one of the biggest automotive controversies in history, and that involved the Ford Pinto. And you mentioned another vehicle that had issues with rear gas tanks and explosions and fires, and the Pinto is the most famous of all, produced in the early 1970s, went into production, and people loved these things. They sold literally thousands and tens of thousands of these Pintos. They got about 34 miles to the gallon. But if they were hit from behind, there was a possibility that they could catch fire and ignite. But it took years to weave its way through the court system. Finally, Ford did agree to recall those vehicles and retrofit them so that
Okay.
they would uh, basically fix the issue. But after a full year of having that recall in place, about half of the people who owned the Ford Pinto and the sister vehicle to that, the Mercury Bobcat, still had not taken advantage of the recall. They hadn't bothered to take their vehicle in. And I should say that in defense of Ford a little bit, the perception in the public was that thousands of these cars had been blowing up and killing people. And in reality, I think there were only, and only, you don't want to diminish the tragedy behind this, but I think there were around 27 people who were killed.
Yeah.
Don't quote me on that exact number, but it wasn't anywhere near the scale that people had the perception of because of all the media attention.
Yeah, the media will take things and they will hype them up as much as possible. Fear gets clicks, as they say. I find that kind of interesting. It's a lot the same as the Cherokee recall with the placement of the gas tank on the vehicle. The number one thing that everybody should all be understanding too is that driving an automobile is the most dangerous thing you could do. It kills more people than smoking and coronavirus. You could go on forever, right? So just be safe on the road, obey traffic laws, and don't do anything too crazy.
Okay.
Because that was the number one thing right there, right? So it has to do with other cars rear-ending you. So just have to be careful, be mindful of other people on the road, and that's really important, I think.
And the auto manufacturers, if there is a recall, they'll often send you a notice in the mail, but sometimes it's difficult to track new owners to make sure that if you're the second or third or fourth owner of a vehicle, it might be difficult for the auto companies to make sure you get that notice, especially if you've moved.
I know in Canada, those items are sent to Transport Canada, and because when you register your vehicle, they take your VIN number, and that they'll send you notifications that way.
So then the provincial Ministry of Transportation would be the ones who would be responsible ultimately, right? So the information flows down.
Still the auto manufacturer, but it's just kind of like a courtesy system where the government will do that. It's very easy to get your information updated on a vehicle to make sure that your auto manufacturer is going to contact you. You just call them up and you request that you would like your information updated. They don't really bother like asking you to submit documentation or anything. It's just a matter of calling, providing the VIN number, and providing the representative with your up-to-date information. At the same time, they'll notify you of any recalls that may be on the car and that sort of thing. They're really quite friendly, and they do want to help people. So I do recommend when you do get a used car to report that. I know a lot of people don't like getting junk mail, like about this sale or that sale, but it's really easy to ask them to not submit or to not send you sales information if that's the case. They are required by law, if you inform them that you do not wish to be to receive documentation or mail from them that isn't about your vehicle specifically, that they have to comply with that.
And dealers, if you can really call pretty much any dealership too, and I think that they have that information on recalls as well, right? So they should help you.
They should. I mean, there's some nuance with that one, right? So if you think about it, depending on the condition of your vehicle, sometimes it may not be possible for a dealership to do a recall like they're supposed to. So I mean, that's kind of a nuance with it, but usually
because the dealers have to get paid for the work they do, and if they're doing warranty or recall work, the payment doesn't come from the customer; it comes from the manufacturer, right? So if you're getting pushback from a dealer, it's likely because the manufacturer doesn't want to pay them to do the work.
I've never run into anything like that in my time there. Pushback from the dealership would often be if they feel that the vehicle has been modified in such a way, then they can't do the recall, right? So I have not seen refusal from dealerships. Usually when you call them about any type of recall related issue, they just want to get you in and out. Maybe they might try and upsell you something, but I mean, that's not the end of the world, because you could always just say no. Not a big deal.
Right.
But I mean, I've heard every crazy story under the sun about disgruntled customers, and quite often the both sides of the stories would not line up with each other. Like when you find the truth in the middle, usually it's a lot of the times it's the customer having an unreasonable expectation.
Well, I do remember the Runaway Toyota controversy, and when I was working as a general assignment news reporter, I covered some stories regarding that because I did a lot of automotive journalism even then. And I remember there was a gentleman who doesn't even live far from me now, and he owned a Corolla, and he was so concerned about it, and he had claimed that his wife had experienced this problem, could not get the dealer to help him, could not get Toyota to help him for a long, long time. He ended up putting big lemons on his car and parking it in his driveway, and he wouldn't sell it because he was afraid to sell it to someone, because he felt he might be selling a defective vehicle. The dealer wouldn't do anything for him. It was a brand new car. They wouldn't take it back. It was a real mess. And I think it took a couple of years before there was some sort of resolution to that problem. So these things can get out of hand.
They do get out of hand. I mean, we all as consumers want our problems and our fears and our hopes and our dreams to be instantly gratified. A lot of the times that's not going to happen. A lot of the times it's up to a panel of engineers to look at the design flaw or the design issue, put it through rigorous testing, and then take the rigorous testing, get it approved, and then get it approved by whatever government agencies that they have to, and then train the dealership, make the parts, distribute the parts. It's a long road from point A to point B.
So when you were working, actually fielding the phone calls, because I know you also had some sort of a managerial role there as your years went on in that
Yeah.
field. But when you were taking the phone calls yourself, what can you share with us? How were people to deal with on the phone? Because when you're spending that kind of money on a new vehicle, and then you think something is wrong, there must be heavy and high emotion involved in a lot of these phone calls. How do you deal
Yeah.
with that?
Well, it's very easy. You take a deep breath. It's my job to assess the customer situation and the dealership situation, and then assess it from the corporate standpoint, which you get this little warranty booklet that you're not going to read when you buy your brand new car, and the manufacturer's position is going to be what is stipulated inside that book. There's a heavy reliance on dealership because the corporation doesn't sell the cars, the dealerships do. So there's a heavy reliance on the dealership to make things right with the customer as opposed to the corporation. And if it gets to a point where the dealership is just not going to refuse, then oftentimes you're going to be out of luck. And I mean, the biggest thing you have to look for when you're buying a brand new car is make sure you inspect your car before you take it off the lot. Because once you drive that car off the lot and there's the least thing that on that vehicle that is not to your satisfaction, chances are it's going to be a long drawn out process. So you're better off before taking possession of the car to make sure that everything is entirely to your satisfaction. I have seen a number of things too that are consumer driven, right? So I mean, I've seen people who have taken their Jeeps off-roading, and you don't have a snorkel on your Jeep, and you run it through a puddle, and the engine sucks in a bunch of water. Chances are your engine is not going to be in very good shape. So I mean, I have had quite disgruntled people who were not able to understand that it was not a manufacturer's issue on that vehicle.
It wasn't really intended to be an amphibious vehicle.
No.
And we should be fair because these recalls don't affect just sort of everyday drivers for people. Even high-end vehicles like Ferraris can be involved in recalls, because I know Ferrari is involved in a recall for about 10,000 Model 458 and 488 variants that were built between 2009 and 2019 for a potential brake fluid leak issue. So it doesn't have to be, a Ford or a Chevy or a Toyota or a Honda. It can be a Ferrari, or it could even be a Rolls Royce. They have recalls from time to time as well.
Well, I mean, like they recall McDonald's toys too, right? So there's everything in our life that is capable of having a safety issue of some kind or another, whether it's a lead paint or something like that. The cars thing is like I said before, it's one of the most expensive purchases in your life, and you just want to make sure that everything is up to your standard before you close out the deal, right? And that's going to be the number one thing. And
I guess we're seeing, because the auto industry is so integrated, and by that I mean you have all these parts suppliers, and
Yeah.
many of them are supplying different manufacturers. So you could have one company producing steering wheels for 8 different models of cars across different brands and corporations, right? Or more.
Yeah.
So, with just like with the Takata airbag issue, that can affect the entire industry or a big portion of it.
It definitely did. That included, I'm pretty sure, like all makes and models of vehicles. We're also seeing that with computer chips right now, right? So in Taiwan, where they make the chips, there is a big distribution issue with it, and they're making it for all of the automakers. I do know in the town I used to live in that there's an airbag factory there, and they make airbags for all makes and models. So I mean, it's not the manufacturer is getting parts where they can get it for the least cost, and that they could resell the vehicle at highest cost, right? So they want to spend less and make more at the end of the day, and that's just economics.
I see we have some viewers here with us. My friend Pete Leduc is watching right now. He says, "Hey, buddy." Hi there, Pete. If anybody
Hey,
has
Peter.
any questions, you can type them out, and maybe Brenden would have an answer for you tonight. Again, what are some of the give us some of the inside scoop on what went on in that call center with a lot of these phone calls and things that surprised you?
Oh, a lot of. Okay, so the most crazy thing that I have heard is that there was this person who had called in, and I'm not sure if somebody broke into her car or something like that, but she had an unsavory experience at a car dealership. She believes that said car dealership went to her house, broke into her car, and cleaned her car for her, and then locked the car back up and left it like that. And she was calling and saying, "Oh well, this dealership here broke into my car and cleaned it." And I'm like, "Oh well, I wish somebody would do that for my car. That'd be nice." It's one of the things that you don't know how to approach it, right? So it's one of those things like where you kind of have to be like, well, I mean, if you feel like somebody broke into your vehicle, you need to just call the police. Like, I can't help you with that.
So that is kind of a strange story, to say the least. Any other weird ones for us?
Let's see. There was a dealership out in Alberta, and they were making these hats with a slogan on it that said "Make Dodge Great Again." And people from all walks of life were calling in and saying that this dealership was this alt-right dealership, and all these people were saying that they were promoting Donald Trump and all this stuff, and they were quite triggered. And it's just like, well, I will write your complaint down and we'll put that in. But I think we got like I got personally like 5 or 10 calls on that one particular issue that people were very salty about it. I'm just like, what do you do?
So you're not so you're not just taking warranty and recall phone calls. You're taking just general complaints from people sometimes too.
Yeah. And also dealership mediation, like, well, not mediation, but I would mediate between the customer and the dealership, and would try and help them to come to like a favorable resolution kind of thing. Oftentimes it would be like a customer would make like some kind of accusation. Oh, the dealership broke this thing on my car, and I saw it and it wasn't broken before, but when they had it, it was broken, and now they're charging me like $1,000. And it's like, the dealership, you call the dealership, and the dealership goes, well, I didn't see nothing, I didn't break anything. It's like, well, the corporation isn't going to be able to do a whole lot for you at that point. It's a game of he said, she said, right? It's not going to work out that way.
So what is the proper process for someone to follow if they have a warranty or recall to deal with?
Well, number one, you should just try to work with your dealership, and that's what the corporation is going to do with you. They're going to tell you to go to the dealership. If there is, let's say, a parts problem on your brand new 2021 Dodge Challenger, and they can't locate a part for it anywhere, then customer service is able to start a file for you, and they're able to look at getting the part for you sooner. They'll at least track it and try and keep in touch with you to make sure that you have background knowledge and help on it. Um, if you are into like a dispute with your dealership, the corporation will take your complaint, and they do need to hear if there is an issue. So it is good to report it, but they're not going to give you exact feedback on something like that. Um, in my personal opinion, if you are experiencing some kind of issue with where you feel your dealership has damaged your car or something like that, you're probably just better off seeking some kind of litigation. Like,
Because that's not really a warranty or recall issue. That's a consumer issue that's specific and direct between the consumer and the dealer at that point.
yeah. And I
As it
mean, the
would,
litigation route is not going to be easy for you anyway, because I mean, the dealership and the corporation already have lawyers. Um, but at the end of the day, your best recourse is just try and get along with your dealership, and try to maintain a good relationship with them. Have reasonable expectations. Understand what the warranty is. The warranty only covers what your car was built with at the factory. It doesn't cover any add-ons that you had the dealership install or anything like that. It's just going to cover what your car was built with, and that's what it's designed to do. It is designed to help you, and it does help lots of people all the time because things happen. Let's
right.
face it.
And again, it is important to make sure that the onus is in part on the consumer, on you, to make sure that you check to see if your vehicle is up for a recall and to make sure you take advantage of it. And it's important to do that because if you don't get the recall work done, it can affect the resale value of your vehicle later. And especially if it's not done and then you go sort of outside that recall window where maybe you missed the opportunity to have that work done for free. In fact, I had an Audi that I had purchased a year and a half ago, and it had an oil burning issue. And if you had had the warranty work done during a certain period of time, they would do that at no cost. But the previous owner had not had that work done. I ended up doing it myself in my garage to rectify that before I ended up selling the car because I only had it for less than a year. And then I ended up selling the car. Really nice car, fantastic to drive, but that had to be fixed before I could sell it to someone. I wasn't going to sell it as an oil burner to somebody else. We fixed it. But
Yeah,
could have had that done for free had it been done, I think, only a short time before.
I think that is probably the worst thing about it is it's an inconvenience to go and take your vehicle and lose access to your vehicle. It's a big inconvenience to also have like the issue happen to your car. So I mean, you gotta pick like what hard you want there. So it's just a lot easier at the end of the day to be without your vehicle for temporary amount of time and get the issue resolved. So it'll save you a lot bigger of a headache down the road. Um, I have seen like people obtain lots of previously owned vehicles and they're just like flooded with recalls and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
It's a pain in the butt. I get it, but it's the nature of the automotive industry, and it's something that we just have to deal with. I do know that there was laws in the United States that were implemented. Probably sometime around, I would say 2012, 13 or so. Um, So they put the safety standards on the vehicles and made it so that the automotive industry is more accountable for their vehicles. So like, people have probably noticed that there is way more recalls on vehicles now than there ever were, and it all has to do with that accountability that was implemented in the states.
Now, I know a lot of the time that you spent working with consumers and just working in the field of fielding phone calls on recalls and warranty work, you know, it involved a lot of Chrysler vehicles for you a lot
Yeah.
of the time. Can you kind of flip this around for us and tell us what were some of the more reliable vehicles? I mean, you could sort of tell from people calling with problems what the bad vehicles maybe were, or the less reliable ones, but could you also tell which vehicles were the good ones to buy, or which engines, transmissions were the more reliable in the lineups of the brands you dealt with?
A quick do not. Everybody who's watching probably already knows this because they're probably automotive enthusiasts. But you never buy a vehicle on its first production year. That's a no go. Don't do it. Wait for the next year or the year after to buy that model. Believe it or not, probably one of the better vehicles. Like, we never heard anything about it. Probably be the what the heck was it called?
I think you mentioned this, the
Jeep
Patriot.
Patriot. Yeah, the Jeep Patriot before they upgraded it in 2018 or 19. That Jeep Patriot was like the most solid thing, and it was not a car that was filled with a lot of electronics and gizmos. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about. And so it came with the 3.6 liter Pentastar engine, which is probably one of the more reliable engines that operates under the Chrysler brand. It's just something that's been around for a long, long time and was perfected and well operated. I believe they had that engine in operation since Lee Iacocca was running the corporation. But that's something that has been there for a long time.
Yeah, I'm not sure how long that 3.6 was around. I don't know if Iacocca was around for that one or not, but yeah, it's been around for a while for sure.
Oh, it's forever, like long, long
See,
time.
to me, I talk about the Slant 6, but that's going back, you know, to the 60s and 70s. So it shows how old I am. Those are reliable, 318s.
I don't recommend anybody buy any diesel vehicles. I think diesel vehicles are overregulated, and the overregulation has caused a lot of these diesel particulates filter systems that are on vehicles. It just seems to me like they're a big headache, where you have to run your vehicle at highway speeds so often for the diesel particulate filter to be burned off. But if you don't do it, it'll cause your vehicle to go into a certain drive mode. All of these computer systems on these diesel vehicles are just overly intricate, and they're designed to make your vehicle go into like a drive in a limp mode, which limits the amount of kilometers per hour you can drive it if it detects there's some kind of issue with the diesel particulate filter. Which is kind of sad news if you need a truck. I know a lot of truck people absolutely love diesel engines, but I mean, it's one of those things that has been over-regulated to the point of like not being fun to own.
So the emission standards have become so stringent as they've gone into this clean burn technology, because diesel engines today, they burn extremely clean. Contrary to what the average person thinks, but because they're so complex, you're saying that you're seeing more reliability issues.
Yeah, because the computer that it's detecting the status of your diesel particulate filter has a mind of its own. At least I've seen in my personal experience.
But aren't some of these issues related to improper maintenance as well, though? I can think back to I had a Chrysler Intrepid, and if you didn't use the proper transmission fluid, if you didn't use ATF plus 4 Chrysler transmission fluid, it would
Yeah.
wreck the transmission. And people were taking these even to garage, to mechanics, transmission shops, and they were putting in Dexron, GM transmission fluid, telling people, oh, it's all the same. And it was damaging the transmissions. And then, of course, they got a bad reputation. I went through a personal experience with it myself because I took it to a garage. They put the wrong fluid in. I could tell instantly it didn't ship properly. I went back. I said, did you put the ATF 4 in? They said, no, we put in this Dexron 3. I'm like, well, it's not the same. And then I had a big debate. I took it home. I did it myself. I dumped all the fluid out and I tried to flush as much of the Dex out as I could. And I put in the ATF 4. So aren't some of these really maintenance issues or improper maintenance, especially with particulate? If you're not changing your filters, you're monitoring your sensors.
You're not supposed to change that filter. That filter is supposed to, so you get a warning on your dashboard that tells you how much life is left on your filter, your diesel particulate filter. It'll tell you need to drive your vehicle at highway speeds to burn it off. So it's the driving the vehicle at highway speeds, and it's telling you that you have to do this. It's a very expensive component to pay out of pocket and replace yourself if it's not behaving properly. So it's not something like a cabin air filter. It's way more intricate than that. So I wouldn't necessarily call that one a consumer issue. One of the things that you definitely are right, you have to make sure that you are using the right type of fluids for your vehicle. Like you gotta look in your owner's manual, and it's really unfortunate that happened with your Intrepid, because I'm sure at the end of the day you had to put in all those hours to fix the problem, and then the garage probably needed to get paid too, so you probably had to pay
I
them.
paid them, yeah. But in the end, I fixed it. I just know those cars had ended up with a bad reputation for transmissions that blew out, and I just know that it was because people were dumping the wrong fluid into them when they were doing changes, and there were issues like that. I personally, I loved that Intrepid. I thought that it was extremely well designed, extremely well engineered. People always say, well, what's the best car on the road? Well, it sort of depends on what you want to use it for. And they say, I think a Ferrari is the best, or a Rolls Royce, or a this or that. But do you take a Ferrari and throw plywood on the roof and drag that home from the lumber store? Right. I did all that with my Intrepid, drove it through the snow. And if you take care of any car, I think as long as it's properly engineered, it's going to last a long time. Especially today, I think that the quality overall in cars is pretty good. But I think you're right. There are some issues with parts manufacturers, electronics. And that brings me to my next question for you. Maybe this isn't a fair question because I don't know if you've been working in that field recently, but do you think we're going to see more recalls as we see more new electric car technology emerge?
Absolutely. It's inevitable. And it goes back to me saying, number one, don't buy the first production year vehicle. Wait for the second or the third. I find that one of the things that was trending was whenever a new vehicle model came out. So, for example, before I left, what the heck was it called? It was the Jeep with the pickup truck. Can't remember the name anymore.
Oh,
anyway,
what do you? It's on the tip of my tongue.
brain fart.
The Jeep, not the Wrangler. It's the Gladiator.
That's it. Yeah. So, like for
I
example,
think those are the coolest looking things. I love those things actually.
I love them too. And in fact, Jeep was always my favorite brand. And yeah, I've had such cool experiences with Jeep. when working there. I just absolutely loved it. Especially because of its long iconic history. I'm quite a bit of a history fan, and so being able to like spend hours at work going through old history logs and stuff like that was quite fun. But going back to my point there, sorry, I digress. One of the things like that was always trending is for every new model year vehicle that they came out, and the more electronics they packed in it, there was always recalls that were happening, like almost immediately after the vehicle would be released. I don't know where that stems from. I think it's because a lot of these electronic parts, I think that there is a lot of room for failure in the electrical parts. And I think you can test these vehicles, and more often than not, they keep working well. But I think that with the electronics, I think that a lot of electronics behave irregularly or inconsistently 9 times out of 10. Like we've all bought a phone or something that was dud, like or a computer or a tablet. We've all bought these electric parts that ended up being duds. I've had a phone that wouldn't work within like the first year of having it. I think that is probably going to be the biggest thing with what we're also going to see with issues with the huge surge in the electric car market is a lot of dealerships are not going to have the properly skilled mechanics in place to maybe be able to fix a lot of these problems that may occur with them. Especially if you are say you're traveling in a remote area and they take your vehicle, they tow it to the nearest dealership. It's in a tiny little town. And they got Bob, who's been a mechanic for 6 years or something. He's not maybe familiar with electric cars, but he's not going to be able to fix what's wrong.
Well, he might not be authorized to do certain repairs on your Tesla.
Exactly. I think
in fact some of these car companies insist on doing those repairs themselves, and it depends on the jurisdiction you're in. And some areas have consumer protection laws where they have to sell you parts so you can take it to another mechanic instead of the dealer, but other areas do not. And I know that Tesla is one of those companies that they will try to force you to have the work done by an authorized Tesla service department. And there aren't a lot of them around. Like they don't have the dealer network that General Motors does or Ford.
No.
You have a Mach-E, you can take it to any Ford dealer. But there is no Tesla dealer in my town.
Yeah, not one where I live either. But you see, you could have a Ford. My point being, though, like you could have a Ford dealership, but maybe the Ford dealership isn't going to have the proper mechanic in place, or maybe they don't have somebody that's trained for it doing that particular type of work. And the work is very different compared to traditional fossil fuel vehicles. The work is very different that needs to be done on it. So I think that's going to be the number one thing. And I think that ultimately because we are heading that way where the fossil fuel vehicles are going to be replaced entirely. It's all the buzz right now. I think it's going to come to a point where finding a mechanic to repair your vehicle when it's out of warranty is probably going to be very difficult. It might not even be possible. In fact, it might be something that enriches the automotive company's dealership entirely.
Yeah, just to backtrack a little bit too, Brenden, just to correct you, I don't know that the Patriot actually had a 3.6
no
V6 in it. I don't think they did have V6s. As I recall, they had a couple of different 4-cylinder engine options. Because I remember test 2.4, and I think there was a 2-liter as well. It's hard for me to, so many cars out there and so many that I've test driven, but I can't remember every engine and every vehicle, right? It gets a little messed up in my
A lot
head.
of the
But
a lot of the simple engines that Chrysler had are all the ones that are like you're not going to see a lot of issues on them. 9 times out, like they are workhorses.
Mhm.
So like if you have a small gasoline engine that is very simple, it's going to work like it's designed to, and it's going to work for a long time.
But the
Especially
point is that the 3.6 liter is an engine that you dealt with in various models, and it was a reliable motor, regardless of the model it was in, right?
regardless of it is one of those it was one of those engines that they had it. I'm pretty sure they had it in the 200s, and they had it in all kinds of different models. It was one of those things that they kind of cookie cuttered it into other cars, right?
And in defense of you, I mean, your expertise is customer service. You're not a mechanic. You're not a car aficionado. You're speaking from a customer service perspective, right? So it's not your job to memorize automotive history and
also
I've
been out of the field for many years, so
right for a few.
Yeah.
So what vehicles did you find were some of the worst to not buy?
Anything Fiat.
Okay. And
fix
why is that? What kind of problems were you seeing with those as people called in?
Cheap parts, like cheap body, cheap parts, just not really something that's designed for North American travel. It's kind of a cutesy idea, but I mean, at the end of the day, like these are just vehicles that are manufactured in Mexico and then shipped up from Mexico to here.
So that's like things like the Fiat 500, stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly. Fiat 500, Fiat 500L. It's a cute idea because if you're somebody who doesn't need much for your car, like say you just go and buy groceries once a week and go to church every Sunday, like sure. But at the end of the day, with these vehicles, like they don't take much of a beating or any of the beating.
Unless you get the Abarth, the high performance version, they're pretty quick.
They're pretty quick.
Those 500s are a design exercise. They're about style, and people buy those to look cool in a cute little car for various reasons. Maybe you're an artist, or you're living in New York City and you just want a little urban runabout.
A lot of the cars that I would say like don't buy, like they like the market decided that like way before me, like the Dodge Dart. You can recall like that they tried to make that all the hype, like the commercials for the Dart when it came out were oh look, we're bringing back the Dodge Dart. It's like it didn't even last 5 years in the market before we're not doing this anymore. Like people weren't buying it, you know what I mean?
Right.
Or even the Chrysler 200, which was kind of their economy model. That one did not do very well. I did not receive a lot of complaints about the 300. I think you have told me though about some complaints you've had with yours, but I'm not sure.
Well, the 300, I own one.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, my wife drives it, and I actually hang on a second here. I like the 300. I like the car. They just all those cars at a certain point, you need to get the front ends rebuilt. So you just need to plan for that. You need to put about $1,000 aside so that when you get to about 70,000 kilometers, you're gonna get rattles in the front end, and it's going to be hard to isolate it. I've had a couple of them. I had a Dodge Charger as well. You just have to get the front ends fixed up, and that for me that meant basically rebuild, like replacing the tie rod ends, the ball joints, everything. Right, just replace it all, and then you're good for another 80 to 100,000 K, say something like that. Maybe 70, 80,000.
I do know like a lot of those 2000 era Chrysler vehicles, like the tie rods and that sort of thing were always like a big problem. Some of them did have like entire frame customer satisfaction or recall, or well, it was more like a special warranty that they put on it. It wasn't necessarily like a recall. It was like we are extending the warranty period for engine cradles on, I believe 300s were included in that. The Chrysler Sebring, which is no longer with us, was included in that list. This is all stuff that you can find online. The internet, believe it or not, has a lot of these recall documents and stuff where you're able to pull them up without any corporate resource whatsoever.
Mhm.
So it is incredible what you are able to find out there on the internet about these automakers. But yeah, my understanding that yeah, that was quite prevalent for those model years. It looks to me like the Chrysler 300 though took a big facelift. I don't know how much different it is now compared to what it was.
Not a lot. They still have the same sort of lines. I do like the newer ones. I like the lines a little bit better on them.
Yeah,
But
it doesn't look so much like a box.
yeah, I've owned a lot of
Stylish.
Chryslers over the years. I've owned lots of them. They have their own little issues and their own set of advantages. I find that you can get them used for less money.
That's good.
But I think that relatively speaking, but I think again that's why it's important to make sure that you that you check on those recalls,
Yeah.
because there were recalls on this 300 when we purchased it, and it was only I think 2 years old when we got it, and then 2 years later we received a recall notice in the name of the previous owner.
Oh no.
Yeah, but it wasn't anything safety related as I recall, but it was still something that we took it in and took care of it. And there was an electrical issue, as you mentioned, because the fuse boxes in those things will corrode underneath over time.
Is that the totally integrated power control module or TIPM? Something like that?
It's the fuse box in the engine compartment itself.
Oh,
So there's corrosion that occurs on that. One day the thing just stopped running, and I don't know if that was a recall issue. It probably was. I believe it was, but it hadn't been done. So one day the car just wouldn't run in a parking lot. Couldn't figure it out. Took a long time. So it had to go in and have that replaced.
if only you knew me back then.
I would have been phoning you. Yes.
Yeah. You would have had it fixed already.
Yeah, but that mine's got the 3.5 in it, and the 3.5 liter. I found it to be a very good motor, but
Yeah.
just last year, replaced the water pump, new radiator, maintenance stuff, and it was a good thing I did that, because the water pump, when I decided I'm going to replace that water pump as just maintenance, and it actually just started to seep. So that's the key, is just maintenance, right? If you have a good motor, good, you maintain your car, it will take care of you if you take care of it.
Yes.
But
Absolutely.
I see a lot of these 300s and Chargers. People beat the crap out of them, right? And a lot of people don't maintain their cars, and so you see a lot of them beaten up and almost worthless.
I think that is kind of telling of our society. Like I think that happens a lot more than anybody thinks. Is like we all get anxiety when we hear something wrong with the car. I mean, I don't fix cars, but I know you do. So you probably get excited when you hear, "Oh, there's something wrong with the car. Let me see what I can do to fix it." But
I don't get excited. I don't want to fix it.
I get a lot of anxiety when I'm like, "Oh no, there's something wrong with the car. Like, what am I gonna do? It's gonna cost all this money, and I don't know how to fix it." Like, it's just how it goes. It's take care of your stuff, and it'll take care of you.
That's right. So we've been on here for just about an hour or so, Brenden. So let's just kind of wind this thing down. Are there any other pearls of wisdom or interesting stories that you can share with us before we sign off and call this a night, or any advice to people, perhaps any last thoughts?
I think
Because we did
just
promise people an insider tells all as we reveal the secrets of automotive industry recalls. So spill the
I think
beans.
the beans is so, and it's going to be. I guess it's not as exciting as Mr. Walker here portrays, but I guess what we should walk away with here is when you buy a new vehicle, make sure you check and see if there's any recalls, and make sure you go get them done. Or maybe don't even buy that car because it has recalls. Like, it's up to you, but check and make sure. And make sure that you have your contact information with the automaker for the car that you bought, so that if there is an issue, they can contact you. That's can save you a big headache.
Yeah. And is it fair to say, I mean, over the years, we saw issues like the Chevy Vega with Teflon coatings in the cylinders, and the engines didn't last. Or we had the Ford Pinto issue and the litigation that came from that. And um, there were pickup trucks from General Motors that had fuel tanks mounted on the sides, and there were issues with those. And then it ended up with friction between consumers and the manufacturers. But today, in
Yeah,
your experience, do you think the automotive industry, the manufacturers in general, have learned their lesson and are more consumer satisfaction oriented and customer service oriented today? We're seeing less of that. Are they more focused on making sure that people are taken care of?
I would
Is that a
say I would say that if you find a dealership that takes good care of you, you should continue to do business with them. It's like it's how capitalism works, right? So you wouldn't want to reward a company that is doing bad behavior on you by going and buying another of their car, right?
Mhm.
I would say that there is a big disconnect between the automakers and consumers. I wouldn't outright paint them with a nefarious, evil picture, but I would say that they care about their bottom line a lot. And I think that it would be very easy for any automaker if they were to bring the focus back to people. I think it would be very easy for that automaker to sweep the market if they did have uh, a more people approach to things. And I think that there is a big disconnect there where maybe it's not that they don't care about you, it's just that it's difficult to care
So
for
you're saying
people.
that even now, like, well, I guess corporations in general, whether they're making running shoes, breakfast cereal, or cars,
If they
right?
can get away with, if they can get away with it, they will. Like that's the bottom line. That's the
Hmm.
bottom line. If they can, they will.
But there's less of the backroom analytics going on where they're trying to figure out whether it's cheaper to fix the problem or deal with the lawsuits. Is there less of
Uh,
that going on in your estimation from what you
I would
saw in your
I
job?
would say it's even more because we're in a culture of litigation, like stemming from everybody knows the story about the old lady who burned herself on McDonald's coffee, right? And she sued McDonald's. Like
Right.
we're in a society of litigation. There's more of it that's going on than ever. What
You mean
you'll
more
find with
litigation, people
yeah,
suing
people
companies?
suing. But what you'll also find though is that the the automakers will almost always settle, and when they settle, they say, "Oh, well, what is in this lawsuit is not true, but we're going to settle anyway." So it's kind of like a weird thing where it's like a double speak where we're not taking accountability for this, but we're going to pay money for it anyway.
Mhm. Right. So corporations still have no heart, is what you're saying. But what they've learned is it's usually cheaper to keep the customer happy or the
Yeah.
customers happy and keep them safe than it is to deal with the lawsuits after, because there are a lot more people suing and are inclined to sue today. So it's
Absolutely.
maybe not, so they're maybe not doing this out of the goodness of their heart, because corporations are not humans. They're just big, fat, heartless entities. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's fair.
Okay. All right. Well, on that note, Brenden Kennedy, thank you so much for joining us tonight on SST Live. We'll have you back on, because there are some other subjects that I would like to discuss with you, not just in this vein, but in the vein of electric cars and just some other subjects that are automotive related. So thank you again so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you so much for having me, and I look forward to doing it again.
All right, take care, Brenden, and thanks to everybody out there who was watching this live stream tonight, SST Car Show Live. And remember, when I'm Rick Walker, when you can't get to the car show, we will bring the car show to you. Catch you on the flip side.
You're watching the Autos 360 Network.